DND number 8, June Flower, in Jesus' name, Chapter 7. Thankfully, the cave was unoccupied. It had a large opening about 15 feet across, and it went at least 20 feet deep into the rock. The floor was dry and hard. Cam watched Jeffy as she nibbled slowly on her food. They dined on raspberry protein bars and water. Her face appeared thinner and pale. Her eyes blinked slowly as she seemed to concentrate on chewing. They'd bathed in the river, washing the perspiration from their bodies, and Jeffy had left her hair down to dry. It hung down now, nearly blocking her face from his view, yet her eyes seemed luminous in the gray light of dusk. "How are you feeling?" Cam asked her. "A little better," she conceded. "It's good to be clean and dry. My feet hurt, though. I'm not used to running so much. I had to doctor a few blisters." He glanced at her sock-covered feet that were tucked up closely to her body. "Do you need me to take a look at them?" She smiled. "I think I have it taken care of." He nodded. "Of course." She frowned. But, thanks for the offer." "Yep," he said as he rose and dug the sleeping mat out of his pack. She watched as he prepared their bed. Both her body and mind were so tired. She slept only a few hours when Ballon and Sun Yu had come to her tent to wake her. Then all hell had broken loose, and she'd run for hours that night before she and Cam had climbed into a tree and slept. They'd traveled for hours again today, including a high-speed sprint. It all had taken a toll on her body and possibly even more on her spirit. She wanted her mother, her family, so badly. She needed their comfort, but she couldn't have them. All she had was this hardened man who'd sworn to protect her, this hardened man who used to be a kind, sweet boy whom she trusted. Now he was a rough and tough man whom she wasn't sure at all about trusting. Oh, she could probably trust him physically, like with her life, but not with her feelings. Glancing at him, she watched him settle himself on the edge of the mat. He spread a light cloth, the same one he'd covered her with last night, she supposed. Then he pulled a pistol, looked inside the chamber, checked the ammo, and laid it near the mat, close to where his head would be. Finally, his eyes met hers. "You need to rest," he said softly. She blinked and was surprised to feel tears fall over her cheeks, and quickly she wiped them away. "Hey," he said, rising and coming to stand before her. Reaching down, he grabbed her by her upper arms and pulled her up to stand. "Oh, sweetheart, don't cry now. It's going to be okay. We're going to get you home, I swear it." She nodded her head furiously, trying to make the tears stop. I don't know why I'm crying. I'm just so tired, I guess." And she stopped as she concentrated on wiping her eyes. "And what?" She shrugged. "I guess I was looking so forward to seeing my mom and dad and Bree and my brothers." She sniffed loudly. "And my sisters-in-law and my nephews and nieces." She chuckled almost hysterically. "Everyone. Kimmy and Marissa and Jeff and Mickey," and the tears started anew. "Okay now, Jeffy, I get what you're saying. And you've been through a lot over the past year and a half. You've been strong and stoic, and now you're done. You want to go home and let the love of your family heal your wounded soul." She nodded and looked up at his face. That's exactly it. I feel so lost. I need them." He brushed the back of his knuckles over her cheek. "I understand." She hiccuped. "But I can't have them, can I? I know logically I need to reconcile myself to that and just get over it, but..." She blinked. Well, it's hard. It's been a long, hard year, and the past 36 hours have been absolute hell. And God, that sounds so freaking pitiful. Where is my strength?" She shook her head and gave a small smile. I seem to have misplaced it along with everything my father has ever taught me." "Jeffy, do you think you should be a statue with no feelings at all? You're human, or possibly superhuman," he joked, in an effort to lighten her spirit. "I don't feel so super. I feel like a lost little girl." "Well, you are. Well, at least a lost young woman." You have the right to stop being the caretaker of the world for a little bit and just be you. You have the right to your emotions. I mean, Jeffy, you just lost 3 people that you loved dearly, 5 including the babies. Allow yourself time to grieve and time to get over the shock of what's occurring. She nodded, wiping the last of her tears. I loved them so much, she said softly. Not just Ballon and Sanyu, but Marimbe too. We were all so excited about finally getting to see the babies and holding them and naming them. We were excited about them coming to the States and introducing them to the family. It's so hard to think that they're gone. It's a great loss, Cam agreed, and you haven't had proper time to grieve or to mourn their loss. So, yeah, a few tears are okay, you know? Well, you're right, of course. Wearily, she leaned her head against his chest and let him hold her. Without thinking, her hands spread over him, feeling the hard muscle and ridges of his chest before they made their way around to his back. And sighing, she hugged him tight. Being with him, being close to him was so natural, it was as if they'd never been apart. They fit, they always had. She admitted to herself it felt good to be snuggled up against him again. It felt more than good. The hunger was still there, as it had been since the first day she'd met him, only now it wasn't the curiosity of a young girl. It was the need of a woman. She sighed and rubbed her cheek against him and pressed her ear to his heart, listening for the strong, steady beat. I can't have my family right now, but at least I can have you. He smiled. You have me, yes, you do. He cupped her face in his strong hands and leaned down. Listen to me, Jeffy. I'm here for you. I'll always be here for you. She bit her lower lip and sniffed. He watched her teeth make indentations in her lip, and how he wanted her. As if she knew what he was thinking, she gave a slight nod, and he wondered if he'd let his guard slip and she was reading his mind. I need you, Cam, she said again, her voice soft and pleading. It took a second, and then he realized that she was not talking about emotional support. She was talking about a physical need, a need for physical closeness and for release, and the touch of her soft lips to his sent a jolt right through his heart. The night at her home, before her press conference, he'd watched her and wanted her, and it had been miserable. He remembered thinking, just one kiss. If only he could have just one kiss, he'd be okay. And now it was happening. She pressed her lips to his. He could feel her need and her urgency. She was allowing her tumultuous emotions to vent through the kiss. Her arms lifted and wrapped around his neck, and slanting his head, he deepened the kiss, both of them making small grunting sounds until he felt her body go limp against him. She sighed in the back of her throat, and her arms fell away to hang by her side. He broke the kiss and stepped back to make sure she was okay. Her eyes were closed. She swayed on her feet as if she were in a deep trance. And then her eyes blinked open and she moved forward and kissed him again. Finally, though, his brain kicked in. He wanted her badly, but not like this. She'd said it herself, she needs him. She needs him because at present she's in turmoil and she's unable to have the comfort of her family, and so she's turned to him. He understood it. He understood her need. Yet, if he were to take advantage of the situation, he just might ruin the chance of ever having her come to him willingly, out of love. He'd fought and trained and lived without her for 5 years, banking on his ability to win back her love, not his ability to seduce her. Taking her face in his hands, he broke the kiss and pulled away slightly, looking into her eyes. She whined in protest and turned her face up, offering her mouth again, and he smiled at her. Why are you stopping? She demanded. I need you, Cam, please. I know, he said softly, and I understand. And I need you, he thought. Cam scooped her up in his arms, carried her to the mat, and laid her down, then eased down beside her. He closed his eyes a moment, pushing away his own feelings. She turned toward him immediately, but he pushed her onto her back and covered her mouth with his, kissing her gently and deeply and slowly, and fighting and controlling her efforts to have a wild, frenzied coupling. He lifted his head. Jeffy, I want you to get some rest. Her eyes flew open. What? I don't think it's a good idea to do what you have in mind. She didn't protest or argue like he expected, which told him she knew instinctively that he was right. It's been a difficult few days, to say the least, and I haven't seen you do what I know you usually do often. And just what is that? Pray? Have you forgotten to pray? I'm positive the family back home is on their knees. She sighed, knowing he was right on. I guess it feels like there's been no time. Well, no time like the present, he said. She smiled. You sound so much like my dad. Sorry. No, don't apologize. I like it. It's comforting. It's kind of like he's here. Oh, I wish that he was, but you're stuck with me. I guess that's not so bad. Back to the original subject, Jeffy. Would you like to pray together? Or if you'd like, I can make myself scarce and give you some privacy. She looked at him curiously. The Cam I remember wasn't so sure about the existence of God. Cam smiled at her. Well, he has made himself known to me. Is this again the influence of my father? He shrugged. Well, he's a pretty influential guy, don't you think? Yes, he is. He didn't push anything on me. No, he wouldn't do that. I just watched him. He was a kind of power. He has a kind of power that emanates from him. I wanted to have that, feel that for myself. So I began to search, and I asked him about it, and he directed me to its source. Once I began to earnestly reach out to God, he began to touch my heart. I started reading the Bible and praying about it, and slowly I began to have a knowing that this God thing, it's real. He is real. Jesus is real. He is the Son of the living God. The difference this has made in my life is incredible. From knowing nothing and having no guidance in my life, no morals, no knowledge even of right and wrong other than my own instincts, to having the love of God and actual feeling that love. I mean deep in my heart. The difference is amazing, like night and day. Jeffy blinked back the tears. Cam, that is a beautiful testimony. It helps me so much. I've always known God and wouldn't know what it's like to be without him. You are so much stronger than me. You had to go through so much to find him and to bring yourself into the light. I'm so proud of you. Cam breathed deeply. She had no idea how much her words meant to him. Well, I had your father's help and a certain scripture that really got me through the past years. What scripture is that? Philippians 4:13. She nodded with a smile, one of my favorites. He took her hands. So, Jeffy, will you pray with me? She nodded and closed her eyes and listened as Cameron's masculine voice appealed to their Father in heaven, gave thanks that they were still alive, asked for protection and guidance, pleaded for peace of mind for Jeffy, acknowledged that they wanted only God's will to be done, and offered themselves as his servants, all in Jesus' name. Jeffy whispered her amen, because that's all she could do. Cam smiled at her. You're as beautiful as ever, he said softly. Eyes closed, tears streaming, she made no sound. Gathering her close, he tucked her head against his chest, stroked his hand over her silky curls, and a few minutes later, she was sound asleep. New scene. Cam. He came awake and aware immediately, his training kicking in. A quick scan told him all was well for now. Jeffy still lay on his chest, her hand resting over his heart, moved back and forth slightly. Yeah, he answered her. Why didn't you just ask me? Ask you what? Why didn't you ask me to wait for you? I mean, when you made the decision to train with Jason, why didn't you tell me what you wanted to do and just ask me to wait for you? I would have waited. You had to know that. He brought his hand up to cover hers. I couldn't ask that of you, Jeffy. Yes, I knew you'd wait, but I was unsure of myself and untested, so to speak. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to complete the training. What if you waited for me and I failed? What would I have done then, huh? Come crawling back with my tail between my legs and settle down at my master's feet? What is that supposed to mean? Never mind. The point is, it was something I had to do on my own, without the pressure of your eyes on me. I didn't tell you simply because I was afraid of failing. She snorted softly. Well, that would have not happened. That would not have happened. You don't know that. Joey said it was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever done. Back then, Jason's Elite was just getting started. At that time, no one had made it through the training. Not one person. I wanted to try. I wanted to prove myself. And besides all that, things had to change between us. Change? Why? Well, the way you thought of me had to change. Our interactions had to change. And the only way to completely do that was to go away and reintroduce myself to you at a later date as a different person. So, even though you still loved me and you knew I loved you, you had to leave to become a different person. I don't get it. Drawing a breath, he sighed deeply. I know you don't. What I do get is that you left me and you hurt me more than I ever knew I could be hurt. I couldn't understand why you didn't love me anymore. I told you I did love you, remember? Yeah, but to me those were just empty words. I felt like if you really loved me, you wouldn't have left me with no clue as to where you were. You would have at least written or called to find out how I was doing. I didn't have to. She thought that over. Because you knew how I was doing, because my father and brothers were in constant touch with you. Right. Okay. But did you think that maybe I might want to know how you were and what you were doing? Like I said, Jeffy, I had to make a clean break. You had to forget who I was, and when the time came, you would get to know the new me. And just who is this new you? You tell me. She thought quietly. I don't know. You're like some superhuman being, invincible, strong, I guess more confident, definitely a little cocky, a lot like my brother Joey. But you're still Cameron. I mean, you seem really different, and yet I still see glimpses of the Cameron I knew, so I guess you're still my Cam. Yes, I am, because every experience I've ever had, every person I've ever known helps to make me the person I am today, including you, Jeffy. The love I felt for you had the love I felt for you had everything to do with who I am today. He stopped and squeezed her hand. The love I have for you now is 100 times greater. Her eyes narrowed. You're saying you still love me, even now. I never stopped loving you, Jeffy. I never will. I'm so confused by all this. Well, eventually I'll be able to tell you the whole story, but I want to tell you in small bits so you have time to digest what I said before I tell you any more. Again, you sound like my father. Well, your father had a great deal to do with me leaving you. He was the catalyst. I don't think I want to know anymore. Don't be angry with your father. Well, I am angry with him. It feels as if he's betrayed me. You don't understand what a rock he's been to me my whole life, and now it makes me feel so alone to think that he betrayed me. He didn't betray you, Jeffy. I know of a surety that he only had your well-being in mind, and that is not a betrayal. Giving in, she sighed. She snuggled her head up under his chin. Fine. I will try not to be angry with my father. And one of the reasons I will try is because it hurts too much to think anything else. For now, though, I just want to forget everything. That's fine with me. The present moment is really the only one that counts. She pouted. You've become wise like my father, too. He smiled. I've definitely been through an awakening of sorts. Her hand moved slowly over his chest, and he knew immediately where her mind was going. He placed his hand over hers to still it. No, he said simply, knowing she would understand the complete message. You want me, I know. I can feel it. Not now, not like this. Besides, you know it's not right. He took a moment to breathe deep and raise his mental defenses against her probing mind. And it's rude to read someone's mind without their permission. She blew out a breath. Sorry, it was loud. And yes, I know it's not right, and it wouldn't be the first time I've chosen the wrong path. I don't seem to be myself. I keep going back and forth. Should I be mad at you? Should I even speak to you? I need you right now because we're in the middle of Uganda, so I'm dependent on you no matter how much I don't want to be. If you don't want me to give myself to you, then what do you want? She asked, exasperation evident in her voice. When you come to me, I want it to be out of love, not because you need to release some pent-up emotions, and certainly not because you're dependent on me. You want me to come to you out of love. Yes, Jeffy, because I love you. And when we kissed last night, it involved every bit of my heart. It had everything to do with the love I feel for you. Stop saying that. You don't love me. You left me, and you hurt me. I've always loved you. I do love you, and I want you back. She sat up, her eyes wide at his admission. Well, you can't have me back. So there. I won't let you just waltz back into my life. Maybe you don't understand how much pain you caused me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking of you. I cried for days. I tried to have other relationships, but they didn't work out. I even went to some bars, got drunk. Me! I got drunk. And what's worse is... What? Don't stop now. What else? I got stinking drunk and I had some one-night stands. That is how I lost my virginity. I took one of the most important steps of my life with a stranger who didn't give two figs about me. And it was because I was so depressed, I simply didn't care anymore. Do you know how bad I had to feel to get myself into a situation of waking up alone in some strange man's bed and not even remember what we'd done together? To read a note that said, "Thanks, babe, let's do it again sometime"? His heart dropped. Jeffy, he said softly, I'm sorry. Oh, now you're sorry. But back then, did you think about what I would be going through? Yes, I thought about it. That's why I asked about you so often. She shook her head. You asked my father and brothers. Well, they didn't know the half of it. And you know what? I feel betrayed by all of them, and I feel they betrayed me because of you, and that really pisses me off. And that anger is directed at you. And I can't talk about this anymore. Every time I start a conversation with you, I just end up mad, so I guess I just won't talk to you anymore. Jeffy, she started dressing. Just get me home, Cameron Wallace. That's what Uncle Jason is paying you to do, so just do it. He nodded. He'd really blown this conversation. He began breaking camp without another word. New scene. They walked the entire day in silence, arriving at the small cabin in Little Kapika around dusk. It was nothing more than a room with a cook stove and a pallet on the floor. However, there was running water, and Jeffy took advantage of that by bathing and washing her underwear. Cam cooked a meal of canned stew meat and veggies, and Jeffy gobbled it down as if it was a gourmet meal. Still, not speaking to her assigned rescuer, the night was quiet. The pallet turned out to be clean and soft, and Jeffy fell immediately to sleep. Cam thought John would pick them up along the trail sometime the next day, but that didn't happen. Not that day and not the next. They'd ended up camping out again. It had now been over 3 days since Jeffy's vow of silence. Of course, they'd been walking at a fast pace, and there wasn't much energy for conversation. Still, Jeffy had to admit she was feeling a little silly about it. So they'd once been a couple, and so he wants her back, and so he went away for 5 years and made something of himself. Why was she so angry? It wasn't like her at all. She needed time to figure everything out. Maybe when she had a moment or two of peace, she'd be able to put everything in perspective. Until then, she'd do well to get all the information from him that she could, so not speaking to him was indeed silly. The past 2 nights, since leaving the little cabin in Little Capica, Cameron had produced a tent from what she'd come to think of as his magic backpack that he must have borrowed from Dora the Explorer. She missed the stove in the cabin that had provided cooked food and warmth. They'd not made a fire for obvious reasons. Fire can be seen and smelled for miles and miles. So they'd sat together without speaking and eaten their protein bars under the stars. And then they'd climbed inside the tent and slept side by side. They'd already been walking several hours since they'd broken camp this morning. Jeffy judged it to be close to noon. She had been thinking about her family and how worried they probably are, and she'd glanced at Cameron, and she realized that his parents probably had no idea where he was or what he was up to. They had no idea he was in any kind of danger, and worse still, they probably didn't care. She softened towards him. He was alone in the world, except for her and her family. He said he still loved her, but he'd had to leave and do this hard thing. She understood being driven to accomplish something. If only he'd told her. Yet he didn't tell her because he thought she had to see him as a different person. Why? Walking quietly beside him for days, she tried to reach out to him with her mind and see if she could sense anything, but there was nothing. She wasn't getting a thing. How much longer do you think? She finally asked, her voice gravelly from disuse. His head jerked around at hearing her speak. He smiled at her and cleared his throat. Well, since John didn't make it to us yesterday, the next rendezvous point is not far at all. Just through the trees there and across the field is a small road. We'll follow it until... She had been watching his backside, marveling at the muscle there when he came to a halt, and she practically ran into him. What is it? She asked. He put a finger to his lips and parted some branches. Jeffy's mouth fell open. She was looking at a large green field that seemed to be completely covered with flowers and butterflies. The flowers were yellow and white. Most of the butterflies were white with black details. Some were the orange and black of the monarch. They rose and settled individually, fluttering high, then swooping low. It was one of the most beautiful sights Jeffy had ever seen, and she couldn't help the tears from coming to her eyes. She turned to Cam, her eyes blinking wide. It's so beautiful, she whispered, unable to control the emotion. He smiled at her, and she was surprised to see that he, too, had tears in his eyes. There are indeed beautiful gifts to behold in this world. Gifts, he added, as his eyes moved from Jeffy back to the field of butterflies. I wonder why they are all here. What phenomenon has caused so many to be here in this one place at one time, she asked, as she moved past him to get a better view. Maybe it's a sign, he offered. She smiled and glanced back over her shoulder at him. Maybe. Maybe they were sent here to cheer you up, to lift your spirit and heal your heart. You know, the world can only take so much downtime from Juneflower Kino. She gave a soft laugh. I definitely haven't been myself, have I? Suddenly, she dropped her pack off her shoulders. Well, it's time to be me once again. She took off running out toward the middle of the green lake of fantasy. Damn it, Jeffy, wait, Cam yelled. He dropped his own pack, pulled out his FDOS, and took off after her, drawing his pistol from its holster as he ran. He caught up to her in the center of the field. Eyes closed, arms thrown out wide, face turned up toward the sun, she spun in a circle. His field glasses on, he moved around her, looking out in all directions, gun raised. He realized that from a distance it would look like some odd choreographed dance. Jeffy, I appreciate your impulsiveness, he said slowly, but you could at least let me scan the area first before you ran out to be a sitting target. She opened her eyes and smiled. I'm standing. Huh, very funny. She laughed. I'm sorry I worried you. Would it make you feel any better to know that I scanned the area and felt no danger? He blew out a breath. Well, maybe a little. Still, you're my responsibility. Oh, you've made that clear. And besides evil men, there are wild animals to think of. Oh, and snakes too, she said as she ran in a large circle around Cameron, reaching to cup the butterflies in her open palms. He shook his head as if she were an errant child. Yeah, Jeffy, snakes too. She leapt in the air. Oh, thank goodness you have your fancy glasses and trusty gun. Do you see anything dangerous? No, but I have to ask you to not take chances with your life. She stopped dancing and moved close to him and lifted her arms around his neck. Oh, poor Cameron. I'm making things very difficult for you, aren't I? Well, you did say it was time for me to be myself, and this is me. He couldn't help but smile. Yes, it is. We live in the now, she said, in the moment. Isn't that what you said the other day? It's what my father says all the time. And at this moment, the heat from the sun is warming my cheeks, and it feels so good, and the breeze is blowing ever so slightly, making the grass and flowers sway gently, and it is so beautiful. And the butterflies are fluttering their wings, causing who knows what changes on the other side of the world. And we are both a part of this moment. Isn't it wonderful? Chuckling, he nodded his head. Yeah, it's wonderful. And you have your arms around me, and I can only be grateful for that, since a few minutes ago you wouldn't even speak to me. Well, my heart has melted, she whispered. Some, she added with a smile. I don't quite understand everything yet, but I trust that I will, eventually. Until then, there is no reason to let darkness and anger fill my heart. Well, I think that's very level-headed of you, Jeffy. She grinned. Thank you, Cameron Wallace. You're welcome. And now, since we're living in the moment, he bent his head and gave in to the overwhelming urge to kiss her. And she didn't resist. She tilted her face up and offered her mouth to him, and gently he touched his lips to hers and brushed back and forth across them, taking in her scent before he settled his mouth over hers. There was something so alive in her kiss, soft and sensual, and making him want with a fierceness he'd never known. Pulling away, he looked into her eyes and realized she was feeling the same. Oh, Jeffy, he whispered, everything you do, everything you say, pierces my heart. She leaned close and nibbled on his ear. Kiss me again. In this moment in time, I am yours. He closed his eyes, thinking about her words. You hesitate? She asked. Well, I'm trying to figure out if I take this moment with you, will it destroy my future with you? Ah, I understand. But you can't worry about the future. Whatever will be, will be. You can't live in fear of what may or may not be. Geez, it's amazing how much you sound like your father. She smiled sweetly. Here's something to think about. What if not taking this moment is what destroys our future together? Have you thought of that? I am offering myself to you. Kiss me now, in this moment. Do you want to? With every fiber of my being. Then kiss me, Cameron Wallace. Show me how much you love me. He sighed. There is this part of me that insists you only allow me to kiss you because you love me, he argued. Not some impulsive sport. Well, do you think I make this offer in anger, or in sympathy, or in charity? I want you to kiss me, Cam, so it isn't charity. And I assure you, I feel no sympathy for you. And there is no anger left. I offer you all the love I'm capable of at this time. Take it now, or let's continue on our journey. He pulled her to him roughly and gave her a bruising kiss, and she squealed in delight, then pushed him away. She unbuttoned her shirt and let it fall, then swiftly pulled her tank top and bra over her head. What are you doing? I have an urgent need to run naked through this field. Cam shook his head. No way, Jeffy. Yes way, she laughed. I want to run naked in the sunlight and among the flowers and butterflies. He stood there a moment looking at her. What? She laughed. I'm picturing you naked in the sunlight and flowers with the butterflies floating all around you, and it's intoxicating. But, no buts. Yes, buts. We're standing in the middle of an open field with a road running along beside it. There are enemies somewhere out there trying to kill you. I left my pack over there in the cover of the woods. She unbuttoned her pants and stripped them off. Jeffy, did you hear anything I just said? She laughed. I guess I'd better hurry. No, Jeff. She ran around him in a huge circle, jumping over flowers, reaching for butterflies that seemed to be dancing with her. For a few moments he could only stare. The scene he watched was mesmerizing. But he quickly cleared his head, raised his gun, and turned in a slow circle. She leapt at him, wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling his head down for a kiss. Cam didn't fight her mostly because he had both hands on the gun. He kept his eyes open while she kissed him, searching for danger. She moved back across the field. He did his best to not look at her, but couldn't help notice that she had a bikini tan line. His eyes moved up to her face, and her eyes were closed, her head turned up to the sun. With the flowers and butterflies outlining the picture he beheld, it was like being lifted into a fantasy world. She ran toward him, not slowing, and finally tackled him. He landed on his back, and she leaned down and kissed his mouth. Goodness, that was fun, she murmured, shifting over him slightly. He grunted with her movement, then, smiling, reached up and cupped her face. You are perfection, he said softly. If that's so, then why are you frowning, she asked. Jeffy. He stopped, flipped her off him, and held her down against the ground. He reached for the gun and lay flat on his stomach. Grab your clothes, he ordered, but stay down while you do it. What is it? I heard something. Cam maneuvered around, scanning the area. A tan minivan with a sign on the side that read Wilderness Safaris was now parked at the edge of the field. Cam couldn't see the driver. He moved a few feet to his right to grab up his field glasses and put them on. Still no driver. Can you see who it is, Jeffy asked. Shh, was his only response. After a minute of silence, Cam turned to her. We're going to edge our way back to where we dropped our packs. We need to get out of the open. I want you to stay right behind. He swung around on his back, his pistol aimed straight at the heart of the man who stood about 20 feet behind them. Good day, mate. Cameron blew out a breath and rolled his eyes. Damn it, Sweet. I could have killed you. I could have killed you first, Agent John Sweet drawled. There was nothing Cam could say to that because it was true. What in the heck had he been thinking? Jeffy, having succeeded in getting her pants up, sat up smiling as she reached for the rest of her clothing. Do you mind? Cam asked John. John's eyes moved over Jeffy. Not a bit. But as Cam's eyes narrowed, John tipped his finger to his hat. Pardon me, ma'am, he said as he turned his back. Jeffy giggled and dressed quickly. The ma'am you've been eyeballing is Dr. Juneflower Keno. Have a little respect. Oh, I got respect for the good doctor there, John quipped with a smile. It's you I've lost respect for. Yeah, well, you can't say anything to me that I'm not already saying to myself, Cam muttered as he stood and holstered his pistol. Cam waited until Jeffy had her bra and tank top on before he made the introductions. Jeffy, meet John Sweet. John, Dr. Keno. John turned. A pleasure, he said. Likewise, Jeffy answered casually, offering her hand. Listen, don't be too hard on Cameron. He's been really stalwart about taking care of me. I don't need you to defend me, Jeffy, Cam growled. John looked from Jeffy to Cam and back to Jeffy. The circumstances you find us in, she continued, well, it's my fault, actually, she said as she finished buttoning her pants and shirt. John grinned. Your fault, huh? Well, this sounds like a story I'd like to hear. Too bad, Cam said. I don't mind, Jeffy said. Shut up, Cam barked, making both Jeffy and John laugh. Our packs are over there, Cam said, pointing toward the tree line. Nodding, John walked with Jeffy and Cam to collect their packs. Jeffy looked the new guy over as they walked. Blonde, tan, dressed much like herself, in khaki pants and shirt, tan hiking boots only, he wore a wide-brimmed trail hat. The typical Aussie stereotype through and through, right down to the endearing accent. He was taller than Cam and thinner, and his smile was big and friendly. If he was Ameritech, though, that meant he was deadly. In only a few minutes, they were in John's enclosed vehicle and traveling at a high rate of speed up the dirt road, headed toward the southwestern border of Uganda. "There's a cooler there in the back," John said. "Help yourselves. And there's some sandwiches in the box there on the seat." "Sandwiches?" Jeffy asked excitedly. Cam pulled water bottles from the cooler. Most of the ice had melted, but the water was still cold, and he handed one to Jeffy along with the sandwich. Jeffy unwrapped the paper. Oh, Cam, there's meat and cheese." She took a huge bite and closed her eyes. "OMG, I can't believe how good this tastes." John laughed. "OMG? Sometimes the kid in her still comes out," Cam explained. "Yeah, apparently in you too. But I swear I won't tell anyone that you lost your cool professional exterior for some—" He stopped because Cam had his gun pressed against John's shoulder. "Say it, and I'll shoot you." "Cam, have you gone crazy?" Jeffy cried. He holstered the gun and sat in the front seat and chased his bite of sandwich down with the cold water. "Apparently." John laughed. "He wouldn't really shoot me," he explained to Jeffy. "It's a long story. You see, I accidentally shot him way back in training camp." "You shot him?" Jeffy laughed. "You find that funny?" Cam asked. "Oh, no, of course not," Jeffy said, still smiling. "Anyway, it was stupid of me. I was careless, but still, everyone teased Cam about it. One day after a particular hard day and another hard bout of teasing, he gets real close to my ear, and he whispers, 'One day, sweet, I'm going to find an excuse to shoot you.' But you see, after he said it, he smiled. And I knew he wouldn't really shoot me." "Think again, Johnny boy," Cam said. "But why did they tease Cam and not you? You're the one who messed up." "'Cause of where I shot him." "Where did you shoot him?" "That's enough," Cam stated. "In the, backside," John answered. Jeffrey pressed her lips together to keep the smile from her face. She glanced at Cam, who was pouting. "Oh, my poor baby," she said. "It was in the back of my thigh," Cam corrected. Jeffy looked at John, who winked and grinned. "It was in the backside," he whispered. "He was standing right in front of me. I was putting my gun away, and it just went off." Jeffy cleared her throat. "Well, it could have been much more serious. Let's just be thankful it wasn't." She smiled and took another large bite of her sandwich. "So, John, sweet, are we still headed to Kashin Village?" "We are. It's a fairly large town in western Uganda, about 5 hours away. I will drop you there where you will lay low for a while. I will then come and take you to an airstrip in Rwanda, and you will be on your way home." "A while? How long is a while?" Jeffy asked. "I'm not sure," he answered, glancing at Cam. "Jason wants more time to extract information from the mercenaries who were rounded up after they attacked your camp." "We caught some of them?" Jeffy asked, glancing at Cameron, who only seemed to be listening casually. "That we did, darling. We took a few out of commission as they traveled from the village, and one from the hotel in Kampala. Also found a few dead. We presumed that was compliments of you," he said, nodding toward Cam. Cam nodded. "Does he have any information yet?" "Let's see. A man named Ormandi gave a villager a gift for Dr. Kino to show his appreciation for all you've done. He asked the villager to place it in her tent as a surprise. The villager was very distraught to learn that he planted a bomb in her tent." Jeffy's face paled. "Ormandi? He's responsible for the bomb?" "So it appears. He works for some Russian billionaire who, along with others in his conglomerate, believes you are a menace to the world's economy. Ormandi says you were warned and given a chance to back off. He says you made it clear when you gave your speech at the hotel that you had plans to move forward. On the other hand, Ormandi swears he did not plan the ambush that took place when you left the hotel, and Jason believes him." Cam frowned. "Does this Russian dude have a name?" "Not yet, but Jason feels sure he can break these guys and stop the threat." "One threat." John nodded at Cameron. "Explain," Jeffy said. "Jason feels he can stop the threat the billionaire dude poses. That's one threat. There are two different groups after you, Jeffy. the bomb in the tent, and the mercenaries that invaded the medical camp intended to make a kill. The attack on the road was an attempt to take you hostage. Yeah, Jason, John added. Jason says the truck driver who tried to push you over a bridge was with one group, and the men who attempted to take your friend on the beach, thinking it was you, are working for someone else. So, you're saying that there are two different groups of people trying to get me. One group wants me dead, and the other wants me as a hostage? Cam nodded. That's what appears to be the case. Great. Well, that's just great. No problems, love. Just stay low for a few weeks while Jason works on this. After that, if things are still rough, your entire family will be here, along with a strong show of force from Ameritech and possibly the U.S. military to escort you safely back to sunny California. The U.S. military? Jeffy asked. Yeah, like, you're a VIP, love. The government hasn't been involved yet because they don't want to ruffle any feathers, but if they have to come and get you, they will. They hesitate because no matter what good they may try to do, it's twisted around to make them look like warmongers ready to take advantage of and gobble up all the poor countries of the world, Cam grumbled. He drank more water and wiped his mouth. Unfortunately, there are viable reasons for that line of thought. By the way, John said, thumbs up for warning the chopper pilot, Cam. He got away unscathed. Jason is still investigating how the bad guys knew you were headed there. He thinks there was at least one spy in the village. Jeffy shook her head. I can't believe someone in that village would want to hurt me. I mean, I loved them all so much, and I thought they at least cared about me. You didn't know them all, Jeffy, and money does crazy things to people, Cam said. Well, logically, I know that. One only has to study a little history to learn that lesson, yet it hurts more with it affecting me so personally. She shook her head. I don't know why I'm so surprised. Because you see the world through rose-colored glasses, Cam said with a gentle smile. Still, remember that the villager may not have been bribed with money. He may have been motivated with threats to his family. Jeffy frowned. If so, then I hope he's okay now. Of course you do, Cam said warmly. Sighing, Jeffy looked up at John. Any other news? John pressed his mouth tightly together. Hart's still MIA. Cam cursed softly. What? Jeffy asked, alarmed. Did you say Agent Akins is missing? Yeah. No one has seen him since he ran toward your tent the other night. Oh, no, she cried, her hand covering her mouth and tears coming to her eyes. Do you think they took him? We don't know what to think. The good news is we haven't found his body. Jeffy shook her head. All this because of me. If you'll allow me to say, sweetheart, we all know our job is dangerous. We do it voluntarily. You're important, and your work will save millions of lives, and every single one of us believe in it and in you. And on top of that, I think Hart's alive. If not, we would have come across a body by now. Jeffy sniffed. Thank you. Have you any other news? John said, searching his mind for something positive. Chris Coley is doing well and on his way back home. Your mom and sister are pretty worried about you. The rest of the family is confident that Cam here will bring you back safe and sound. Your friend Kim and another friend Marissa say, and I quote, for you to get your fine butt home. And I must say I concur on that point. Watch it, sweet, Cam muttered. Jeffy sniffed. Anything else from my family? He glanced at Cam. That's all for now. Can I call them? Not yet, but I can once I'm far enough away from you. I'll give them a message for you, and we've got you set up with a computer, and you can send encrypted messages through Ameritech. Thank you, Jeffy said. Cam turned in his seat and smiled at her. It won't be that much longer, Jeffy, especially when you think about the fact that you've been away from them 1 year and 3 months already. What's a few more weeks? Jeffy nodded. I was doing okay until about a week ago when all this stuff happened. Now, I just want to go home. Well, why don't you get some rest, he offered. There's a whole seat there just begging for you to stretch out. I think I will, she said sadly. Once Jeffy was settled in, Cam turned to John. Fill me in. How many do we have in the field here? Is there anyone in Cashin Village I can trust? And how are we stocked for supplies and ammo? With the men's deep voices as soft background music, Jeffy closed her eyes. So much had happened over the past week. Was all the bad stuff behind her? She hoped it was. Still, there was something there, just at the edge of her cognitive thought, that warned her of impending doom. She willfully pushed that thought away and concentrated instead on what had happened in the field with Cam. She had to admit being with him was like coming home. It felt so right to put her arms around him and to taste his kiss once more. Yet, the big question, is she willing to open her heart and love him again after he hurt her so badly? She'd wait judgment to hear everything he had to say. For now, all she could think about was, when he smiled at her, it made her smile. When he kissed her, she felt it all the way to her toes. She felt a oneness with him that was beyond earthly. She found herself craving that oneness. Being near him now was like a sweet dream that she'd played through her mind over and over that first year after they'd broken up. Feeling safe for now, she let the music of their conversation lull her to sleep, and she awoke when the vehicle rattled over several bumps. She sat up groggily. Cam was asleep in the front seat, his feet up on the dash. John glanced back at her. Sorry about that. Road's rough through here. We're almost there. I've slept that long? Coming down after an adrenaline rush, he answered. She nodded. She well knew the effects of adrenaline on the body. Jeffy looked out the window. It was late afternoon, early evening. She glanced over at Cam. I can't believe he's asleep. John shrugged with a smile. Well, he trusts me. If he didn't, he wouldn't allow himself to zonk out like that. He trusts me to take care of you and him, though he'd never admit that. Jeffy smiled. It was my fault. John sat up straighter and cleared his throat. Excuse me? Today, before you found us, I ran out into the field and he caught me and was trying to get me to go back toward the forest, but I took all my clothes off, and when I decide to do something, I am a force to be reckoned with. I threw myself at him right there in that open field for all to see. You know, he would be the first to tell you that that is no excuse. She nodded. Yeah, but you weren't there. Believe me when I tell you, I made it pretty hard for him to do anything but hold on and enjoy the ride. John coughed. I do believe you. Jeffy smiled. You know, you're not at all what I expected, John said. Really? What do you mean? I know you're this, genius doctor who's going to save the world, but truly, you don't talk like I expected, you know? She laughed. You mean I don't use big words and look down my nose at the rest of the ignoramuses in the world? No, I don't mean it like that, he said quickly. And then he smiled. Well, actually, yeah. I used to do that. Back in school, some kid would make some innocent remark and I'd go off on some scientific explanation for why they were feeling or thinking like they were. They'd just look at me like I was totally weird. It took me some time to realize that there was a time and place to spout my knowledge. Cam was one of the few who remained my friend through it all. He sort of taught me how to act normal so I could interact with normal people without alienating myself. It meant so much to me, him accepting me the way I am. I didn't have many friends, but I could always depend on Cam. That is, until her voice trailed off. Sorry. Sometimes I say too much. It's okay. I heard about you and Scotty Boy being an item back in the day. You did? What else did you hear? Not much. That he had to leave to start training, and that was pretty much the end of the relationship. Until now. Yeah, until now. The vehicle slowed as John pointed off to the right. We're coming into town. That's the primary school there. It's right on the edge of town. They have almost 500 students. Jeffy nodded as they passed the brick structure. Her eyes took in the town as they drove slowly. It was larger than she expected, yet the road was roughly paved. The main street divided into two one-way streets going in opposite directions. Many official government buildings and stores lined each side, while businesses and what looked like apartment housing occupied the strip of land in the center of the two thoroughfares. There wasn't much traffic, but Jeffy could count at least 10 vehicles, either driving or parked out in front of small markets. John pointed off to the right again. There are several streets that way leading to new neighborhoods with fairly modern homes, similar to what you would see in lower-class suburbia in America. Where will we be staying? She asked. You, my lovelies, will be up here. He drove another mile and turned right and then pointed left. That's the medical center. Jeffy saw a large complex of brick buildings. Wow, now I'd say that's a great facility, she said. Larger than I expected. It should be a great facility. It was built with seed money from your foundation. Because of that facility, more people came, more houses were built, the school was built, teachers, doctors, nurses came, and homes and services had to be provided for them. The town has more than quadrupled in size in the last 10 years. The quality of life for people here is way up there on the scale, which is bringing more and more people into the area. 10 years ago, Jeffy said, I was only 15 years old. I was so caught up in my studies, I didn't realize my foundation was doing so much back then. I just knew the Keno challenges and about a dozen other events were donating heavily to the cause, and that my father had hired several people to help oversee the running of the foundation. I don't remember anything about Caution Village. I came to Africa to visit several times, but I've never been here. Well, you've been here in their hearts, I can tell you that. But they don't even know me. And they still can't, Cam said as he sat up. Jeffy smiled. Hey, sleepyhead. He stretched. Hey, yourself. There's a group of homes down here past the medical center. Most in this neighborhood are doctors, professionals, well-to-do businessmen. There are always several houses available for rent. He turned into a dirt drive, and here we are. Jeffy smiled at the small brick home, obviously newly built. It had flowers growing in a tiny bed along the front, accompanied by some lovely greenery. The lawn, too, was green. Jeffy turned to Cam. Oh, this is just so cute. Cam smiled. Cute. Right. John ushered them inside. There's food in the fridge, clothes in the bedrooms, of which there are 2. New IDs, passports also in the bedrooms. You have a new computer, Dr. Keno, since your other one was blown to bits. He gestured toward the television. You have radio, TV, and internet, but no emails to home, he added pointedly to Jeffy. You can use the encrypted line that goes through Ameritech. Jason will get the message to your family. Got it? I got it. She looked around. The furnishings were simple yet modern, a sofa, chair, and television in the front room. Modern kitchen with a small dining table and chairs against the back window. I gotta go. You do what Cam says now, John urged Jeffy. He knows what's best. He held out the keys to Cam. The ride is yours. But how will you, Jeffy began. Agent Holton will be here any minute to pick me up. He nodded. On that note, Dr. Keno, may I have a private word with you? Surprised, Cam glanced at John and then shrugged. I'll check out the plumbing, he offered, and headed to the bathroom. John reached into the breast pocket of his shirt and pulled out an envelope. I have a message for you from your father. He asked me to deliver it privately. I'll consider my job done. He handed it to Jeffy. Jeffy took the envelope quickly and held it to her heart. Thank you, she said, her eyes moistening. She moved forward and stood on her toes and reached up and kissed his cheek. Be safe, she added. He touched his cheek. I think I'm beginning to understand. Understand what? He smiled. That it was your fault I caught Cam with his guard down. She giggled. John, will you assure my mother and sister that I'm just fine and that Cam has taken good care of me? Of course. And tell my mom to remember that I said what I said in the car, that no matter how bad it seems, everything is going to be okay. Tell her to remember it was a message from Jesus. And tell my father that he and I have lots to talk about. Oh, and tell him I'm more determined than ever to get home and see this thing finished. So he needs to be working on the media aspect of things. Oh, and tell my brothers that I'm going to kick their butts. And tell Kimmy I miss her. And tell Marissa that she better get her act together and come to California when I get home. And just tell them all that I love them and miss them. She smiled. Would you like me to write all that down? John laughed, tapping his forehead. No, actually. Hyperthymesia. I think I got it. Well, now, that's interesting. Yeah, it's my superpower. And that is the end of chapter 7.